In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the options to receive stock into Peoplevox. So I'm currently in our Android app, and if I go to the menu, I have a section on my list of transactions called Receive. Within Receive, there are a few different ways to receive inventory. First way is what we call Receive by Item. This is used in a setting where you want to do a formal goods in, but in a situation where you don't have a purchase order for that stock. We then have a workflow for receiving against purchase orders, as well as a workflow we call receive without scan, but really this is continuing to receive against the purchase order, but using a very specific setting, usually in cases where the purchase order is effectively an ASN, so an advanced shipping notification. This would be a situation where we have a supplier that is giving us a carton or pallet specific information about goods that are coming into the warehouse. So we'll look at the receive without scan, the ASN receipt workflow first, and then we'll look at the other ones. So going into receive without scan, first thing I'm presented with is a list of all the purchase orders currently outstanding in the system. I can select from this list, I can filter this list, but with this workflow, we would be usually scanning a barcode that relates to that purchase order off the outside of a pallet or carton. So in a setting where a supplier has provided you with an ASN, they're usually able to provide the reference to that ASN on the inbound shipment. So we would scan the barcode on the carton, and it would immediately pull through the full purchase orders, or the full that we expect to come in that box or in that pallet. So we can see here a list of all the items on this receipt. It's pulled through the expected quantities, and it's asking us to scan a bin location. So this is another pointer to the fact that this should really be used for relatively small ASN style pre-advices, not sort of a traditional forward order, because we're going to receive this into a single bin location or into a pallet or license plate container. So I do have the option here to amend these quantities if needed. So we could double check the quantities and plus or minus them if required. But in most scenarios, we're using this in a setting where we have accurate information and we're effectively just scanning the to location and confirming the receipt. Note that we are still receiving against a purchase order. So in Peoplevox, we don't have a specific concept of ASN, but usually that would be dealt with by the ERP. So we'd send some suppliers we might send through the purchase order from the ERP. Other suppliers we might be sending through the ASN from the ERP, depending on how those goods were coming in. So to go into some of the other workflows, so I'll next just go into the receipt by purchase order, and then we'll do the version without the purchase order last. So receiving by purchase order, if I go into receive by purchase order, first question is which PO? So we can find that PO by scanning an item. The system will let us know what purchase orders that item is on, and we can select from the list if there's more than one. Or we can scan a purchase order, so similar to the ASN receipt workflow. We can type a purchase order number into this box, or we can use the magnifying glass here to look up outstanding purchase orders. We have a filter where we can type in at the top and select a PO from the list. One note here is we can actually select more than one PO. So if you've got a container coming in, it's got two POs on it, can actually select both and let the system allocate the stock to the right place. Further down the screen, then we have some optional fields to capture a carrier, which carrier did the goods come in on, and also a delivery note reference. Now, this is actually the very close relationships, like a GRN record. So we do have that sort of that concept in Peoplevox where we can create a reference that ties together multiple receipts. And as you can see here, we're calling it a delivery note reference. And the use case for this is a supplier that container that turned up with these two purchase orders on we're able to take a paper copy of a delivery note. We're able to capture that delivery note into the system. So let's say this is DN 1001. So we're able to capture that delivery note into the system and then receive against that delivery note. And we could have multiple receipts all tied back to this single delivery note. And as you saw a second ago, I just knocked that PO out. We can have more than one purchase order received against a single delivery note. So running through the workflow, if I go next, I'm then asked to scan the items in, or at least count the items into stock. So a little bit different than the previous workflow where it showed you what we expect. In this setting, we were asked to tell the system what is coming in. So we're able to, I've selected an item here from the lookup where it's given me a pre-filtered list of everything we expect on the PO. But in an ideal world, we'd be scanning the item in, and then we can either define a quantity by continuing to scan the item and the quantity will increment. We can use a plus and minus. We can also type into this box as well. So we can define a quantity of 20. We do also have units of measure functionality. So the ability to say, right, well, this product is available as a box of 5. And actually, I'm not receiving 20 units. I'm receiving 4 boxes of 5 units. Ultimately, that's a shortcut to the same end, but it can simplify goods in operations if you've got consistent carton sizes. And if this is something that's been done at scale, we do have functionality to tie this information together in a barcode. So we could potentially have a supplier providing a barcode on the outer on a carton that says this carton contains this product in this quantity. So we can have a single scan for actually all the information. We can receive more than one item in this receipt. And at the end of the process, I'm asked to scan it to a bin location in the warehouse. Now, a little bit different to an ASN receipt workflow, we do not expect you to receive the whole PO in a single receipt. Let's say off the back of that container, we might have receive the first two cartons off and put them on a pallet or into a quarantine goods in location in Peoplevox. When we click receive, then the system will say, well, have you finished or have you got more? Well, I've got more and I'm going to continue to receive off the back of this container until it's done, or maybe until my shift ends and somebody else can pick that up later on. So there's no expectation that we receive a purchase order in full. So I will just receive this into inventory, click receive, and I'm just going to click finish now. So I've just finished my receipt. The final workflow then is receiving by item, which we won't spend a lot of time on. It's a very similar process to what we've just seen with receiving by PO, except we don't have that purchase order record. So we're basically just receiving against a delivery note reference. As we entered previously, I entered a delivery note reference. If you don't enter one, if you leave this field blank, the system generates one automatically behind the scenes. So from a stock receipt point of view, that is now complete. That stock's in the system. There is then a choice on how formal we want this receipt process to be. So we can have a situation where the receipt is automatically confirmed, and we go back to the ERP and confirm the POs have been received and what quantities at the point where the stock's been physically received. Or we have the option of having a supervisor review and manual acceptance of that receipt. So jumping into our web application, if I just refresh the page on the goods in section, we can see I've got a new goods in record created, which is the one we've just done where we've received that inventory. So this has been created, and in my account, this is not automatically reconciled. So the system has not automatically closed this receipt and confirmed it back to the ERP. In my account, I have to do that as a manual check. Is this correct? Yes or no? And then confirm the receipt. So within here, I can go to view. It gives me a summary of what the goods in reference contains, which purchase orders are on it. From here, then I can basically go in and click reconcile. If there is a more complex setting, it should allow me to. Yeah, so if I go into this and click reconcile, it will give me a summary of what's going on. So it will say the purchase orders that were on this order originally. This is the quantity that was expected of these items. These were not received in on this goods in reference, but by the way, these ones were. So we can get an overview of how much we expect on the PO and whether or not what we've received is correct. And also we can compare this list against a physical copy of a delivery note, which is really its intended use case. So it's the ability to say, okay, yes, the supplier said I was going to receive 20 of these sensory nesting cups in bright. And that does match what Peoplevox said I was expected to receive. This detailed view then will break it down to if by the same item was in multiple purchase orders, we break it out and show the split between those purchase orders. At the end of the process then, I click reconcile, that confirms the goods in, and it goes back to the ERP. As a note as well, if you spotted an error within this workflow, if actually we've said we received 20 of these, but the delivery note said there was only supposed to be 15, we go and check the receipt, and actually there is only 15. We are able to change this quantity through the Android app before we reconcile. This reconciliation process is a very formal way to work. It's not something that's required. The majority of Peoplevox customers will have the reconciliation set to be automatic, so the system just does that automatically.